All right. Call this meeting to order. Missing from the roster is Chris Mackley and Holly Allen. Here's a voting member. Again. He has an unbroken string.
He's on a roll.
So, joining the group. All right. Minutes. And October 11th minutes, which I don't see here.
Did she not get those? This is the work session.
We have work session.
I can make the October 11 minutes. I believe. I'm not sure I brought the October 11 minutes, I'm sorry.
I remember reading them some out and looking at any changes. That's so long ago.
No, I don't have them. Oh, actually, I think they're probably in here. Excuse me. So I'll make a copy. Yeah, I'll make copies of them. You could look at the October 25th one in the interim.
Maybe we can work towards approving these things first.
The one comment I had was that to address the email of Sarah is that I thought we had agreed to essentially amend the frontage incentive that we offer for cluster also for regular subdivision. So that if you were doing a single lot subdivision
Right.
and one of those lots was going to be a new lot, with 150 feet of frontage. If one of the lots was going to be affordable, then it's 150 feet of frontage. In the same way the cluster could if it had affordable units.
Agreed with that. $70?
No.
Yeah, we all agree.
That's the pacemaker going off, you're in trouble.
It only wants the fact. It doesn't want to make a copy. Ah, that's good.
So, do you feel we need to make a change to the minutes?
Yeah, I make a motion that we amend that to reflect the fact that we agreed to draft language to allow 150 feet of frontage.
Well, there's single family or cluster development that includes affordable housing.
Required section.
Do me a favor and write out
The section.
how I should, oops. I missed what you said, or maybe it's just the same as with the email.
Really was an email. I thought we mirrored what we did. What we're currently doing for cluster along 150 feet of frontage if the cluster had affordable housing according to section 10. That we do the same thing for any other, for a regular single lot subdivision.
I see.
That if someone is subdividing a lot and one of the lots is going to be made affordable, then that lot can have 150 feet of frontage instead of 200 feet of frontage.
And I guess I just thought we were taking
No, we never agreed to that.
Okay, okay.
That's how that is.
We kicked it around, but it stayed at 150.
Okay.
There was a lot of kicking, as I recall. Okay, so we have the October 11th minutes in front of us. You want to have a motion to approve those? It's been a long night. I don't need a
So
motion.
moved. To approve them as written for the October meeting.
Second, do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. 25th, we've heard a motion to amend the minutes to reflect the fact that we agreed to 150-foot frontage for a single-family development if it includes affordable housing. If I'm understanding your comment correctly. And with that change, I'd like your motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
We already have 150 in there?
For a cluster.
That's for cluster.
For cluster.
It doesn't say for the affordable housing, which we allow for a
Okay.
single family
That's
development.
stuck out at me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just stuck out.
Yeah, it goes there,
Okay.
but it's not complete. It's
Okay.
that was the point.
Yep.
All righty. So, good evening.
Good evening.
Are you Mr. Sear?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Sear called me this morning
Right, yes.
and said he has an issue that maybe is before the planning board or maybe not. And I said, well, come on down because you have some time constraints on what you're doing, I believe.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
And this would be an informal review. If you're looking for input, we can do that. If you're looking for formal anything, we gotta go through a whole big process. But if you
No, I just wanted to, I know Jim Ryan was in at your last meeting, and since then I've made a couple, after I had a chance to think about it, I decided that I got another idea that would work better for me, and maybe better for the town, I don't know.
So
So,
we heard the application, I think, last May. We gave approvals, I believe it was. Actually, I'm wrong, it wasn't last May. I think it was May of 2016, wasn't it?
you know what, I can't remember. I hate to say it.
a while back.
I looked it
Yeah,
up.
a while back ago.
Yes, it was May of 2016.
That was concerning what development?
That was, I believe, we were,
Dinsmore Road?
it was Dinsmore Road, yes, and it was about the converting the units that I had on called Maturing Village into condos,
Yes.
which that has done pretty well. I still have a couple of units to sell. I'm moving into one.
So if you want to bring forward what you have, and we'll look at it.
Where do I go?
Okay. If you can, come on down.
Not, I know you but let me think a little bit about me. I name dropped here, and I arrived here in 1976 when and the town of Jackson was all boarded up. And I don't know where the years went, but I had the option on a large piece of land where you built I gave it up for the town to build it. Town, I don't know if you know, I was gonna do an adventure center there with all the woods, and it took me long enough to complete Nordic Village, so I decided that maybe I should do something a little smaller, you know, with the initial look, and I bought that land primarily for one house lot that I really love. But in the meantime, 22 years ago, my wife got small cell carcinoma. She died very quickly. And I gave up interest on that site. So I'm running a deadline as far as where the inn used to be. And that was 19 rooms. It was 10 rooms, bedrooms, a 3-bedroom suite, and a 2-bedroom suite, and 7 other bedrooms besides that. And what I would really like to do is forget about that. And so Jim was in and he talked about, there was a site that was on the hill here. Anyone, I got 2 copies here. Anyone see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, this is the one we looked at.
So in 16, that's right, in 16, we came in about subdividing the land, okay? So, you have 31 acres on this side, and this was a 5-acre parcel that, for a residential house that I was gonna build on. And then, the other site was where Victorian Village was, so we subdivided that off. But what I'd like to do is see what your feelings would be about me eliminating building where the end was, and keep the original lot that we had gone in for to change to a new location, because the other ones that live far in the woods at my age, I realized that age is catching up to me. And so, but the driveway to get in there is going to be very expensive to get to this lot that I have changed to, but it was worse to get to the lot that I originally picked out. So what I'd like to do to absorb and split the cost, so I have a road going to the first lot, which is the one that Jim talked about last month. And so to get the end, so I want to keep the original lot and the new lot that we're going for. So I have 2 lots, one of which I'll live in, the other one I'll be able to share the cost of the long driveway to get in there.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, you're talking about a new subdividing line here somewhere to allow a house to be built there?
Say that again, please.
Are you looking to subdivide this large parcel here into something that would allow a house there?
Right, that was what Jim talked about, switching from this to this.
Maybe it doesn't mean a subdivision is needed. I'm not quite sure where you're...
Where we left this last time was when we talked to the fellow who came in.
Jim
Did talk about changing the location to here, and I think the consensus was that there was no requirement to make any changes in order to do that.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do now is in order to get to here and still get to here, so I could use half of the driveway to get to here and the other half to get to here. And eliminate the site that the inn used to sit on.
Where is the site that the inn used to sit on?
That is,
Up here? There's the paddock.
right.
Over here?
Close to that.
Right here.
Oh, way over there. Wow,
Over
okay.
here, yeah.
So, in other words, there would be one driveway coming in that would go to this place.
No, I already have a road coming in, all right, but it's getting to this particular site, the road I would have to put in to get to here, and then it would be easier for me to get to this site as well. So I have two sites.
Mhm.
I believe I can have one driveway for two homes, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's true.
Okay, all right, so I forego building the larger structure with the 10 rooms and forget about that, and I'm gonna just have these two sites approved on this land. So that way, when I can get to this one a little bit easier, and then I can get the driveway to go to this other site that I had originally planned on building on, but to be honest with you, with my age and all that, I really don't want to be that far in the woods. So I was going to see what your feelings were about me eliminating the inside and just having the two sites on two home sites.
And there would be no change on the quantity of acres here and the quantity of acres there? You're not looking for another
No,
subdivision, okay?
no.
So I'm confused, yes. So you're not looking to create a new site, a new lot?
Oh, I am, yes.
Ah.
In other words, we switched from the lot that I was going to use to another lot that...
So where would that new lot boundary be?
That would be, I'm not sure I understand the question, sir.
I think what he's asking is are you going to draw another line through here in order to segregate this as a separate lot? Or is this just a building that's going to occur in the 26.5-acre lot?
Oh, right, yes, right, exactly.
So you're not going to create a new line to separate this 26 acres into
No.
two lots, okay?
Well, no, I would just have this subdivided out, and then I wanted to move it from here to here, so I can get to here easier, but if I'm going to put all that driveway in, it'll be easier to get to the second one as well.
Yeah.
And so I forego, like I said, the bigger building.
But where are you, I'm not sure what you're moving.
He's not moving anything.
No, I have,
You're not moving any lines, you're talking about moving the location of your residence.
I'm talking about what has been presented and approved, I guess, and we're trying to switch it to another location, but what
But
I'm
are
trying
you
to do
keeping-
is
you're
have two
keeping-
lots.
You're keeping this dwelling unit of 5.6 acres.
Right.
You're keeping that as a dwelling unit of 5.6 acres.
Well, that's the one we're gonna give up, and then, of course, we're gonna build the inn, all right, back, but not an inn, it's gonna be a big house with 10 bedrooms, but I thought that if I could sell the one lot, okay, and then I can split the cost of the road and the driveway to get to both of them.
But when you sell this, would you be selling the paddock and everything else along with it?
No, that all stays.
Okay, so then you do need a new line to subdivide it out.
He's gonna move to here.
Right,
You're gonna move to here.
right.
That subdivision is gonna stay, but it will go to somebody else.
Right, that's what I was planning on doing, so I can split the cost of getting there.
Yeah. But, okay, so he builds here, well, he can build on that 26 acres.
Right, but in other words, I thought you were going to sell this to somebody else so that you'd have,
That was the proposal at one time.
Yeah, but,
And he was gonna keep
no,
that.
I guess, it's
So-
just too far.
with this residence that gets here, is the person who owns this residence also going to
That's
own
gonna be-
you're also going to own the paddock and all the other
Right, yes,
places? So this is
Right.
one lot that you would own yourself and live in this place?
right,
Okay.
yeah,
And then sell that.
right.
And then this stays with that as the open space for this cluster.
Right,
So really, there's no change on any of the boundary lines, if I understand correctly. All these orange lines are still going to be in effect.
correct, yes.
Okay.
I don't see any
Doesn't need to go to the planning board.
You don't need us.
But I think what we would like to have is an as-built. Once you finish everything and you know where things are, it would be clear for us to have in our records that you didn't rebuild the inn up here and so on.
Right,
We'd like what's called an as-built so that we can see this is what it really looks like on paper.
okay,
Okay.
all right. So I'll go back to Jim and tell him exactly what you're telling me.
Right. I can send him an email about it.
Okay,
Great.
all right, thank you.
You bet.
All right.
You good to go? Right, that's why when you asked the questions, I thought, yeah, you may need to talk to us, but you don't really need us.
Really? Okay.
No, but it's nice to come in and get some
Yeah,
assurance
well,
that the idea would fly.
Right, exactly, all right, so,
Get too involved.
So come on down.
so you're going to email Jim?
I'll explain to him what we understand. If he thinks I've misunderstood something, he'll let me know.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry about my presentation, I'm just,
Oh, no, this is perfect.
yeah.
This is perfect. This is an informal presentation. That's
Oh,
that's what we want. Yeah.
Well, thank you for seeing me since such a
If we were on a napkin, it would have even been better.
Okay, well,
This way,
well, my wife passed away 20 years ago, and that site that's further up, further into the property would have been great, but not for a guy that's living alone, so I want to be a little bit closer to the action. I didn't expect to get all so quick. I guess.
Well, thanks for checking on it. We appreciate it.
Okay,
We thank you for asking.
one of these. Thank you. All right. And you are, I know who you are, I know who you are, but I don't remember anybody else.
Oh, Huntley Allen.
Hi, pleased to meet you.
I'm Kathy Dockery, I'm treasurer. I do see you here often.
Oh, you do?
And my husband and I own Jerry's Furniture. You were just in there the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't there yet. I was still here when
Uh-huh.
you were there.
Yeah, right, okay, yeah.
I see you in here with your dogs. They're
Oh, yeah.
beautiful dogs.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, my baby, yeah.
Yep.
I had to take them out of here. They were so sick from the Lyme, one of them couldn't even get off the floor.
Oh, I
So I
know.
took them to the vet, and the vet said, you know what? They're so anemic, they had so much blood sucked out of them by the ticks. One night I took 16 ticks off of one, and the other night I took 32 off another one. It's just, so I sent them back to the city, I just skipped them back today. The ticks have been just absolutely horrible, And I've already had Lyme disease. I had Lyme disease undiagnosed for 4 years, and then I went to Hudson Valley up in New York by Dr. Horowitz. He's the leading guy in Lyme. He found it. But by then, I've already had like 16 operations because of Lyme. I had my whole jaw rebuilt. Because I had a hairline crack, the line get in there and in my jaw. Yeah, so 4 of those operations were from 12 to 14 hours each. They had 2 teams working on it to rebuild, And then the 6-month waiting period between each surgery. And my wife passed away after I had the first surgery, so I waited too long to get the second surgery. So the first surgery failed. Then you gotta wait 6 months each time, because you gotta wait for the bone and everything to heal before you can have teeth. So I went 2 years, all right. I had 4 of those operations. When you don't know what an operation is gonna be like, you don't have a fear. But once you know what it's like, it's a different story.
Here's who we are.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
All right, well, thanks for seeing me, I appreciate it.
All right.
And this gentleman, you are
Scott Badger.
Scott Badger. So you have a thick son?
Correct.
Oh, okay. It's a small town, I should know all this, right? Well, nice to see everybody.
All right.
Take care.
Yeah.
Tell Dick I said hi. I don't see him much. Oh, mine, right, okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye now.
Thanks for stopping in.
Thank you.
All right. I thought that might be what would happen, and he just wanted to make sure he got in front of us. And
Yeah.
he had a time constraint on it, and,
It was a little while where we got more confused the more we talked.
yeah.
Well, I think you were really
I
good about keeping the
tried
focus. That was very
to
good.
step in there and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And at some later time, he may want to subdivide it again.
Right.
In which case he can.
Right.
But the,
One thing deals with the two houses on one driveway lot. You know, if he produces a private road that meets town standards,
oh God.
Okay.
pardon me for saying anything.
Do I have to step down to make a comment during public comment?
Sure you do. Can you go out there? No, go ahead. You have a public comment.
This is the other side.
Please take your hat off and put, no.
Right. I'm sorry about that. My eyes are really sensitive to light,
Oh,
and when I was sitting over there next to you, it didn't affect me. Tonight, being I don't usually sit on the side of the table, it was really getting to me. Anyway, that's smoke. I got a call about a potential house being divided into apartments. They're doing two, but they would have room for a third, but it's on a driveway. Have we any mechanism for allowing that?
Or disallowing it.
you'd say.
Well, I said immediately it was disallowed because you can have two dwelling units on a driveway.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be more like a cluster?
Yeah, clusters are allowed, right?
Yeah, we allow more than that in a cluster situation.
This is one building,
Right.
But 3 living units? Potentially 3 living units.
potentially,
I mean, you can't get more clusters than that.
no, that's pretty clustered up. Okay.
I mean, I think it would be a building permit issue anyhow. You know, if it were a planning board issue.
It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a planning board issue, it would be the select.
Oh, no, because my advice was, okay, put in the building permit, have it denied, because you can't go to the ZBA without a denial from somebody.
Right.
And then see if that appeal, but he may be able to let it fly.
It's not gonna be an accessory unit, right? It's gonna be another,
Just basically 3 apartments.
One building,
mhm.
3 apartments.
Does he have the soils for?
And he has the septic.
Okay.
I think they're 1 bedroom, so a bedroom and a kitchen.
3 of them,
I know that he has a 1,500 gallon tank, so the tank's big enough. And, you know, I'm not sure how far out he's researched it, but I would say that,
Still sounds all like building permit stuff,
yeah,
not, we're not
Okay.
changing lot lines, we're not changing.
under cluster.
Yeah.
Hi, Bob. We'll see you soon. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That was just my information. I'm going to get back to this person.
The only other thing you have to watch out for is the building inspector would catch is if he puts disposals in the units, because that adds to the size of the septic.
The septic would still be, I think, looked at by Bird.
Yeah. We don't look at septics here.
No?
So I don't understand why that's just a building permit issue if we're saying it's gonna be 4 homes on one driveway, but not clustered?
It's only 1 unit.
I thought you said it's 1 home and 3 apartments.
No, it's 1 building. Three apartments in one
One
building.
building
I missed
with
that.
3 apartments.
Oh, I get it, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it's really, it's still a single dwelling unit, it just has 3 bathrooms and
Right.
however many bedrooms, I mean, however.
Still gonna have to do
Who
qualifications
is
for-
where in it, I mean, I don't think that, yeah, if it really were going to be a cluster, I think it would need to come up with a planning board for basically a subdivision to become a, but I don't think, I don't think converting to an apartment building requires that.
Okay.
It's never come before.
Well, we have had one come before us previously. The Davis family came to us to identify they were changing a home, a single-family home to multiple apartments. And we agreed at that time for that particular, that we had no jurisdiction on that, that it was strictly something that needed to go through the building permit process. As long as it satisfied the building permit requirements.
Good to go.
Thank you, good.
And then if for some reason, you know, your building inspector says, and the building permit process suggests that it should come back to us, we'd be happy to talk about it.
I'll pass the word.
Is there any further public comment?
So I can come back to the table.
Having done, come on back to the table, please. We need all the voting members we can get. Okay, we had a work session on the 25th, and we talked a lot about stuff on the 11th as well, and kicked this thing around enough times. I think the activity at hand this evening is to ensure that the language that we have incorporates that which we decided.
Do you have a section 8?
That's a separate section. I didn't realize when I asked that it be printed out, that hadn't been part of theirs.
Yeah, I only,
So I just,
I do
yeah,
10. 'cause
I just printed this at home. This is why it's always one of the color.
In color.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. I do not remember us talking about having the frontage for the whole town to go to 150 feet. Am I missing?
Just the workforce housing.
That's,
Yeah, I think I misunderstood that whole thing. You know, I thought the workforce housing went down to 100.
Nope, 150.
My notes.
I think we can skip all of that.
So the definition of frontage is going to stay the same as it is now? Is that what
Yes.
our consensus is?
Except, it only would change if we change the private road standards. But that's a different discussion.
Right, but as far as the definition section,
Right, I think if we change the,
okay, the frontage in section,
bring out the whole sentence.
2, 4.3.1.3 is frontage in a rural residential district, number 6. Each lot shall have frontage no less than 200 feet on the public or private road, right of way, except where a cul-de-sac dictates a shorter frontage of not less than 100 feet and satisfactory to the planning board.
When at that October 25th meeting, I had it proposed here the same way it is, and I didn't have any note on it that people wanted to change it back to 200 feet. I remember Jerry talking about taking it down to 100 feet, I think. But I didn't hear the fact that people didn't want to take it down to 150.
Well, I think if we are using the 150 as an incentive for affordable housing, then we need to have it
Right.
still at 200 for the rest of the district. But I think your changes as far as changing that travel way, no, that's right, frontage on a state or town highway or private road constructed to town standards is required. I think that would be good to add. Unless we're happy with keeping it as a public or private road right-of-way, which means it doesn't have to be built, it just has to be on the map. That's what that means.
I don't think we can say right-of-way anymore if we're saying it's got to be constructed to town standards.
Well, I think there needs to be a right of way. I mean, I'm not, maybe a private road.
But Sarah's saying that, in other words, a paper street, right?
That's why it was put in
Yeah.
way back when it was that phrase was added.
Maybe a right of way private road constructed to town standards.
So why do we need right-of-way?
And maybe a private, a right of way means it's a deeded access through the property. I can put a private road on my property, but not allow anybody to use it. I mean, essentially, it's a driveway. So I think there needs to be a right of way so we know that there's always going to be access.
A house that got created cannot be landlocked by whoever owns the rest of the land and say, no, you can't use that.
Right, you can't get to it because
As a, for example, with what we just saw, we saw a lot that would be, it's on a driveway, but if he decided to subdivide that further,
It would have to have a deeded right-of-way
right,
to that far
to that
lot.
part of the plot,
So
right?
could we word it then, a private road constructed to town standards on a deeded right-of-way, on a deeded right-of-way? Is that,
yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like that's more of a Peter Meyer kind of question.
Well,
Is that
I
exactly?
think that's important because right-of-way, it seems to me, they talk about the width of the road, the right-of-way along a road. In other words, the road doesn't occupy all of that space. And the right-of-way may even go beside the road, or not, the road may not be actually on the right-of-way. So I think going forward, we have to make clear that that private road would be on the deeded right-of-way
And constructed to town standards.
and constructed to town standards, yeah.
But I just think that, because right of way, private road, right of way, are those two things, I mean, that sounds more like a sort of legal, this is how you work this.
Yeah, because there are some houses up on Tyrol where the private road is not on the right of way. Right?
Right, well, that's because of mistakes of the past.
Right, so we want to prevent those mistakes in the future.
Well, we
right?
can try to word it, but it's more to have the building inspector, from the time when there was no building inspector, we had lots up there that are 110 by 110,
Yeah,
which are non-conforming. So all those things built up, and then, right, we went through all of it to get the town road on the right of way from Stackhouse, and I don't remember the other party on the other side, but we had to, shave off some property
yeah,
in order to get the town road placed correctly onto a right of way.
yeah.
Okay, well, going forward, we should be watching that when the right-of-way is laid out and then the road constructed. That's all part of the building inspector. I then have a question about an association. Should we have wording that requires an association to go with a development? In other words, if it's other than
For maintenance.
a driveway, right, however, once you get to a private road, town spec private road, and maintain it, because where's our leverage as a town?
So we would add in,
I'm not sure the existence of an association, the association can still decide to not maintain the road, right?
but if we added in wording,
It would-
But at least then the party that's weighing in, that's suffering the most, has some legal leverage, if the road has to be brought up to some standard.
so we could say constructed to town standards with something about with documentation as to ongoing maintenance, or something like that. Can the selectmen put out regulations about that?
I don't know if we could write that into the building permit process.
Or the road standards? Set up road standards that, because that, if we're saying
Well,
constructed to
it's
town
more
road
the
standards.
building, once you apply for that multi-dwelling unit development, that would come through here. And I would think that we could,
That this would be, you have sort of, first lot, and then it's subdivided, and now you have two lots, and we create an association of two. And then, but instead we said not the two, we, said three or more.
right,
So now someone wants to create, subdivide and create a third lot, but then everyone's got to agree to create an association to make that happen. I mean, I think it's worth looking into, because we know we have roads that are not being maintained.
right,
the way
that,
they should be.
down off of Town
Really,
Hall Road, there's
the answer,
development.
the answer to it is that we get roads created to town standards, and the town takes the road, and, done deal. That's how it's done in other towns, I think. But if we're going to talk about forcing the creation of an association, I think that's definitely something we got to look at what other towns have done and what legal.
It sounds like we're talking about definition of a private road, not frontage at this point, this past discussion.
Right,
And what Betsy had written out for private road, to make it around that, just private road means a traveled way not open to public use as a matter of right for vehicular travel, the maintenance and repair of which shall be borne by the subdivider or the landowners using the private road.
Yeah, I took out the part about abutting, because there could be lots of landowners on that road that aren't abutting.
Aren't abutting what?
Exactly, aren't abutting what is one of the questions. I mean,
Aren't abutting the road?
well,
I think it's not so much just that they're abutting the road, but those who use the road. Because you may have land that is like on a corner and his access is from the other side. His land, the whole piece of land may abut that road, but if he never uses that road, then should he be required to pay for it?
If it's part of the development, in other words, somebody came in, had 30 acres, said, okay, I'm going to put in a private road with a cul-de-sac and have lots off the side. And we would say you have to create that private road up to town standards before you start selling those lots. So that's up to the original developer.
Right.
And then you have an association, and what happens is all the lots that the developer still owns, he pays that part. That's his he owns the lots. If there's 8 lots, he has sold 2, so he has,
Right, and when it's sort of all of that at once, then that's where the association is set up right at the beginning.
right,
Where it gets tricky is when,
Yeah, that
1,
is-
2, 3, and at what point
Yeah.
does the association occur, and how does it happen at that point?
because I've seen that up in Carver Notch, where
Yeah, and stem turn,
the idea went in, but then the road never got constructed by the developer.
yeah.
Or it only did enough, so it's just, it's what we have to watch for. If we're going to have enforcement, let's make it workable. Have enforcement that has some muscle on it.
Yeah, to the point around the abutters, though, for example, we just, Conservation Commission, I think, was looking at house being located on the corner of Maple Bush and North Island, whatever the road is that goes up the street there.
I don't,
And there are 3 homes currently on Maple Bush, and this is the corner lot on the corner of Maple, and their driveway is not going to attach to the road, the Maple Bush, even though it's considered to be on Maple Bush. And their driveway will be to North Island Road. And so they are abutting the road, but they're not going to use the road.
Yeah.
So then the question is, are they part of the should they be part of the association or not part of the association?
if they were part of the development that was proposed, if that lot was
Included among them, yes.
then they're part of the
So-
association.
Is it sufficient then to say landowners using the private road?
I don't think it's that, because you've hit the button of that corner lot that could have
Two
a driveway doesn't access that.
Yeah.
You've done it perfectly.
Oh.
That's the question.
Okay.
But it's part of the association because they could, one, because that was part of the development, have this road here. If something happened that they needed to change their driveway, there it is. It's just like the water rights. Now, Nestle Nook has their own well, but they could be on town water.
But again, if it's done as a large-scale development, there's almost always an association that's created for that purpose. But where we run into problems is when it's, you have a creeping number of lots on a road.
So putting in wording like this,
I think the way you have it in general is, it may be borne by those using it for access to the property.
and at least it gives it an argument, somebody can point to the zoning ordinance and say, no, wait a minute, you are using the road.
The only thing I would say is I still think there needs to be, wouldn't a private road that's not on a right of way be a driveway? And so if it's a private road, doesn't that somewhat require a right of way?
Yeah, I think it's good to add right of way on there.
Right.
I think that's important, I realize that now.
All right, so,
But a driveway, you wouldn't call a private road.
No, I'm just saying,
Okay.
if it wasn't on a right of way, then it's a driveway.
Yeah, okay.
And it's being on a right of way that makes it a private road.
okay. So the private road, now you could have a private road that only serves one house. Does that make it a driveway?
If there's only one house built, it's still
Yeah.
on a private road.
If,
Okay.
Because the potential is there for the other.
So do we need an association? Association of one?
The land, well, somebody owns the other land.
so
So
do you
there
want to
the-
keep wording in about an association?
So right now, it's the maintenance or repair which shall be borne by the subdivider, abutting landowners, or an association of abutting landowners. And so if you don't want to say abutting landowners, you want to say of the way Betsy used it, the landowners using the private road instead of abutting landowners, or say an association of abutting landowners, or,
Or an association of landowners using the private road.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's probably more they subdivided a large piece of land up here off Switchback. I think Old Donald Chase almost looked like, unless I was misreading it, looked like his driveway was a right of way across their property to get to his lot.
And one of the problems, and this is where the right of way and the drive and the road don't quite match up, is on, the plan is drawn, it's just drawn, like this nice straight corridor from point A to point B.
Right.
When you go to construct the road, you're
There's the boulder there, the boulder there, and then
And it's drained here, and
Okay, I think maybe I understand what you're saying.
so how would it read?
Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, I would say each lot shall have a frontage on,
Wait, we were just doing private road.
I'm sorry.
3.31.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Private road means a travel way not open to public as a matter of right for vehicular travel, public use. For vehicular travel, the maintenance and repair of which shall be borne by the subdivider, comma, an association of landowners, or an association of landowners, I'm sorry, using the private road.
And so would we put right of way in there or put right of way in the frontage part?
So I think the right-of-way, that's what I was confused about. The right-of-way I was reading as part of the frontage section. But do you want right-of-way also as part of the private road definition?
I mean, if it's a road that serves several, more than one home, there sure needs to be a right of way.
Which you could insert up at the beginning, where it says, private road means what do you have there? A traveled way not open to public use as a matter of right for vehicular travel, constructed on a right-of-way, and the maintenance and repair of the road shall be borne by the subdivider, the association of landowners using the private road. Does that make sense?
Okay,
that states the intent.
okay.
Could you simplify it by saying it means a travel right of way, not open to public use?
No, because you wanted to have it,
You need to have on the right-of-way. I think the word on is important.
it is a road that is on a right-of-way.
Yeah. Okay,
Right, the right of way is not the way.
Right.
So the
Right.
right of way is not the road. They construct the road in the right of way.
So do you want a deeded
And then it's
right-of-way?
playing with words.
If the next thing you say is may the force be with you, I'm in trouble. 'Cause I'm not sure I know which way is the way.
so we'll say in
The right
a deed
No way.
One way?
So we will say in or on a deeded right-of-way? You said in, I said on. What do you say?
On.
It's on.
Okay, thank you.
You don't want to be in the road.
Okay, so on a deeded right-of-way.
That's where the kids are. They play in the road.
All right. So then going onward, each lot shall have frontage on a state or town highway with a class 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 classification, or private road constructed to the town standards as required by the planning board on a deeded right-of-way.
Well, I
Well,
don't
no,
think
you don't need it, because you got it up in the private road.
Okay, we don't want to repeat it, okay? And then we would say that the frontage shall be 200 feet, and is it going to stay 100 feet on cul-de-sacs? It
That's what it
doesn't
says
make
now.
sense to me to have it be 200 feet on a cul-de-sac or something like that.
It says, and the way it's stated here, frontage, oh, it's on the 4.3.1. Okay, it's 200 feet, except where a road cul-de-sac dictates a shorter frontage of not less than 100 feet. Is the way it states now, which I think is,
Shall we keep that
I
same
would
word?
keep that.
Okay,
The people who wrote that did a good job.
okay.
Oh,
And then the one that's little,
Someone's got a way
Roman
back.
numeral mini 3, that says, or maybe a lesser distance is waived by the planning board? Do we keep that one in there, or no?
Well, no, it says
No.
dictated a shorter frontage not less than 100 feet and satisfactory to the planning board.
And then the one down below it in blue on the sheet handed out today, do we keep that little mini number 3?
We said absolutely not on that because we didn't think it was legal.
Oh,
Right.
But just
We agreed not to include that.
okay, thanks.
Absolutely not.
Not wanting the planning board to be in that position,
Right.
You don't
Right.
want to be,
which I agree with.
But do we though need to state that for affordable housing, the planning board can, do we need to just put the 150 feet in this section?
I don't think so, because.
It doesn't talk about cluster either, so maybe.
Right,
Right, no, the
so
others
that would
are,
just be in the section on affordable housing.
right, that in effect amend this
It's,
section.
right. As an incentive, can be reduced too.
So then we don't need these little subcategories, we'll just keep in the no less than 200 feet. That's okay,
And
right?
when you get to affordable housing,
Mhm.
Well, what
then
about
you
100
can
feet?
word all that you want, but say that doesn't fly, we still want residential development to have the parameters that we've written.
Right.
Is that,
With the way it's- Right.
So,
So we're really just changing the private road right-of-way, set part of it.
Yes, and so then we have, I guess, a semicolon at the end of standards required by the planning board. Then we continue with the current sentence, except where a road cul-de-sac dictates a shorter frontage.
Yeah.
Okay.
simplify.
Exactly. The less changes we make, we get what we want. There we go.
Okay.
Now,
And is that more of a housekeeping change, the definition of private road and the sort of clarification of the frontage?
I don't know. I think that might be a good question for our attorney.
The only possible significant change is adding built to town standards, which you might say was inferred
And
anyhow because we have town standards on private roads, but
Yeah.
so I don't know if that would be just a housekeeping change.
Okay. When we're ready to send things to the town attorney, ask him that question.
having checked in with the town office?
Of course. Of course. Oh. It's so insulting.
Whatever you do, don't send it directly.
Okay.
we will send them the whole package, not just this one.
still be section D, right?
Well, and I think I shouldn't have brought up the different numbering yet, it's just too complex. We'll do that as housekeeping if it happens.
Thank you, and it looks to me like it reflects what we discussed and agreed to at the work session.
Which is... Oh, and I was going to say, in Bill's email, I brought up the question of common space, common land versus open space. And I think we had a good discussion on that and distinguishing the two of them. And so what Bill had written in
Yeah,
his
this
email
does not comply with that.
is that it's 20, well, let me just read what Bill had and see how much.
Bill Terry or?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that guy.
That guy over there. And he sent it to all of us. Open space and developments approved under the section shall be common land amounting to a minimum of 50% of the total area of the lot or parcel being developed. Open space and developments approved under the section which create affordable or workforce housing units in compliance with section 10, 11, whatever we're calling, shall be common land amounting to a minimum of 25% of the total area of the lot or parcel being developed. So you have open space, that open space is now common land, which then, because common land...
It needs to be the same provision, whether it is a cluster or not a cluster, and affordable versus not. The wording needs to be similar, with the only difference being that it's 25% instead of 15.
So what is the difference between open space and common land?
Yeah, common land is land that is owned and accessible to everybody in the
Association.
association, or for the development, however you have it.
So that's
And-
also open.
Open space is common land, but common land cannot be open space.
Exactly. There could be, for example, a community building on the common land. That's not open space.
Or it could be the corridors between two buildings. There's common land, for example, it's not specified, but it's not considered open space from a development perspective. Open space needs to be,
Is open space defined as
Yeah,
not
it is.
containing structures?
yes,
Yes.
But
Excluding roads, parking areas, and buildings, except for accessory buildings or structures and improvements that are necessary for recreational or common purposes.
That sounds like,
Well,
so what that does is it gives the developer the opportunity to,
is that open space or common land that you just read?
that was open space.
So open space can have a rec center or something, you know.
So you have the golf course.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing it's mentioned, but it isn't really clear, you're right.
Yeah,
Or tennis courts, or... But it's not housing.
Right.
but need that
And
on-
also, open space is for the common purpose of residents or the public. And this is open space. Common land is just saying that the land is owned by everybody in that
right,
development.
exactly.
And open space is just defining what's on that land. It's not defining ownership.
Common land is a way of defining what you cannot personally make changes to without permission from the association. Open space has a whole different connotation. But
So for example, I think the word accessory is important in the description of open space. You take the area at Cameron Drive, they've got a water pump house area. That's on open space probably. But that's just an accessory building, important for their water.
It's actually on the common land.
Okay. But I wonder if it was counted as part of open space. It might have been.
So we have, for the whole parcel that was developed, you've got the separate lots, which whoever lives on that house owns, and then all of the land around those lots. Because you have a road going through and the lots are all on the road, and then the land around it is common land. And the pump house is on that common land, and it is the responsibility of the association for taking care of the pump house and the water.
When it originally got approved, that may have been part of the 25% of the land being open space.
Correct.
Could have been.
Could have been.
And that would have been acceptable, because it was just an accessory structure. It wasn't a structure being used for, community meetings or something.
No, it was
I
a
think
structure
that-
to,
I think the word accessory is important there.
So,
for the use of everybody in the development.
so I was reading, but, so, common land is the land between buildings. Open space is the land dedicated to the use of everybody within a group and possibly the public. Is that correct?
I think so.
All right, well, common land, go back to the definition of common land. Means land in the cluster development created by reducing individual lot sizes or on parcels with attached units. All land not occupied by units, roadways, or other allowed structures to which access is provided for the residences of, and possibly for citizens of the town or the public at large, and which is owned by either the homeowners association, a municipal body, or a private non-profit agents for the purpose of preserving open space. So we've got Chinese menu there
Yeah.
for common land.
And in open space also, in addition to talking about accessory buildings or structures and improvements, it then talks about that it shall include the commercial recreational uses existing. So those uses might be cross-country skiing, it might be tennis, might be things like that, but it might not, I would assume, it wouldn't be a structure in the open.
Wouldn't be a skating rink or,
Yeah,
what would consider
it might be
closed.
a pool if it were colder temperatures. It could be a pond for skating.
Right, but not
Not a
a rink
structure.
with a roof
No.
over it.
So are we trying here to renegotiate how we define common land and open space? Or are we simply trying to restate that we have a different
I think we
Require-
at that point in the future, redefine.
Well, I mean, if you want to do this, there's a lot of circular argument that I'm hearing here.
Yes, I would.
And it seems to me that it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to have two different definitions based on one being affordable housing and one not. So
Right.
if you want to make changes to that, it has nothing to do with affordable housing and what we're trying to accomplish, then let's have a whole structure on that. Let's get attorneys in here and let's talk about it. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Great.
Well, yes, it does, because we're trying to understand what common land and open space are.
Yeah, but we've already defined it in terms of the one variety.
We haven't
And,
defined it. We
well,
have two definitions that.
We
don't-
do, but are we trying in this process to
No, I agree, we need to funnel things down, but this discussion needed to happen because we have two terms that we don't have good definitions for, so we need to understand what those terms meant to the best of our ability,
Okay.
so we can then move forward.
All right, so what you're suggesting is that we don't have an understanding or you have an understanding?
I would say just use the same words and that, and this is 9.2.6, but actually it is the present 8.
Yeah, that'll be it. I'll fix those numbers.
Okay, the present 8, which is talking about open space requirements in cluster, which now says, open space and development shall be common land amounting to a minimum of 50%. And so we should, all I would say is that developments created in affordable workshops shall be in compliance with Section R, only required to set as a minimum 25% of the parcel as common space, common land. Because that's what it says in the above.
Right. I think I would leave the wording as it is currently.
Right, and
do
just use the same
wording.
wording.
Same wording, and then at some future
I think
point,
that's all I was trying
we
to
ought
say.
to look at redefining common land and open space, and then make a housekeeping change to this so that it's clearer.
What would be the housekeeping change?
But I think in the future, we need to
Oh.
redefine common land and open space so that
Okay.
the two are
Distinct.
distinct.
Right. So
Or
Sarah, instead of,
create one thing that's being, that's both. I mean, the overlap between them is a lot more than not.
okay,
Last line in blue, instead of saying open space, say common land, and then you're consistent.
but it would begin with the word developments.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the only thing I would change in what you had written was common land,
okay.
because it says shall be, what's there already says shall be common land.
Are we going on to section 10? You could start with the one Sarah said, is that what you're figuring?
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is the one, the two, 5-page piece put out by Julie. So you see that most of it doesn't have any changes whatsoever. Sarah took it right from,
The one that was sent to us that Steve Whitman had marked up, I just pulled that because I didn't want to retype everything. And he had typed, and I was checking against the present, and it was all there. And then where he was suggesting changes with the alternative 1 and alternative 2, he was trying to keep it in the same order. And I was getting all confused as to what was 1 and what was 2. And so what I tried to do, and hopefully I succeeded, was to look at all of those items as to the requirements for the lot and the incentives that we were offering, which ones applied to both alternatives, and which ones applied just to the cluster alternative, and which ones applied just to the single lot alternative. And then try to do it, make it clear with the indent. And then because I was using the, what was already there by Steve, my indents got a little screwed up, but that could easily be fixed.
oh yeah,
So,
Well, I was going to ask to consider as we go through, to me, the alternative 1, alternative 2 sort of format is sort of a little confusing. And as you go through it, so you need to keep going back to look at what was alternative 1, what was alternative 2. You have to keep referring back.
right, that bothered me too. And so I tried to just add the words alternative 1, which is as part of a cluster or multifamily development. And then,
But I just wonder, as we go through it, whether wherever we say alternative 1, can we just say cluster development, or wherever we say alternative 2, can we just say
Single.
single lot development,
right.
and get rid of that whole alternative wording.
I see what you're saying.
But I think as we go through it, we'll know better.
And, yeah, that was my point on the comment that I made, whether or not we really needed to have these or not,
I guess alternative 1 and 2.
as opposed to incorporating. I'm not really good at wanting to point back at something else.
So we may want to just look at the changes to, that we're talking about. And so those steps would be, and I use italics and cross-throughs because of photocopy on black and white. No idea what's going to happen.
So, for example, 10.4.2, I think we can either just drop the word alternative one or put under section 8.
Or in compliance with section 8 or
Or
something.
Yeah.
to section 8. I mean, we may get further into it, realize, oh, maybe the alternative thing does work better, but assuming that, you know.
Well, we can still have up in the procedures there on page 2, where it says we can do it in 2 ways, and you may not have alternative 1 or alternative 2. You could just say, just drop those words and have, the creation of it as part of the cluster, or creation as, through the creation of the lots.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was fine.
And it's dot points and not alternative.
Okay, so let's see if that works.
Next.
And then I was reordering some of the sections that were in the workforce housing criteria already. I wasn't getting rid of them, I was just putting them someplace else, which is why I put the little direction in brackets there.
Yeah,
So now you put this 4.1 is telling the requirements to be a workforce housing as far as its size and the deed restrictions.
right, for all types of units.
Okay, so that's going to be for any unit, whichever way. Okay, so then 4.2 gets stuck in where it's affordable units created within a cluster multiplier, or how do you want to say it, in compliance with section 8.
Right,
So instead of under alternative 1, we're going to say in compliance with.
mhm. Yeah, I think that simplifies it a lot.
Okay, so those are the 2. Will be 4 units, one's going to be low income and 20%.
Can I ask a question as far as that goes? So if somebody comes in and builds 4 units, only one of them has to be for low income, is that correct?
Right, at least one,
At least one. So what about the other 3 units?
ordinary units.
They do
Ordinary units, they could be for any amount of money.
Right,
That's the way this was written originally. So what we're trying to do is to tweak the original, and if that's not going to work right, then at a later date, we'll tweak the whole thing and do one model.
Okay, now let's start to speaking from, has nothing to do with money or anything else. It has to do with, how do you think those other 3 units feel about having somebody that's low income right next to them? Or how do you think that that person that can only afford that unit, snobbishness from the other people? I mean, have anybody considered that at all?
I think mixed income developments work great. There's lots of
Yeah.
examples of that.
they've proven to be really successful, and if the people who have the other units feel snobbish about it, they probably won't buy. If they're worried about having, somebody who earns $20,000 less a year than they do.
Well, it's going to be considerably less than 20,000. I mean, you're stopping somebody coming in and buying those other 3 units up and just using them as vacation rentals or whatever it is, or having,
All that's possible, yeah.
okay.
We're not trying to legislate social interactions, right? Just trying to create affordable housing.
It's been
Well, I know
so
for-
successful in Massachusetts and a lot of, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, a lot of Vermont, a lot of places have used a very similar, identical type model.
Do you know how snobby people are in New Jersey and New York? Because I've grown up in those areas, okay?
Well, maybe Jackson people won't be snobby. Who can know? I'm sure some of them are, but.
On the other hand, just take a look at Carter Notch Road. You've got every kind of house you can imagine on the street.
Uh-huh.
Everywhere from what looks like an ex-fishing camp to, castle.
Also, to the one that grew, I like the one that grew. They built a room here, and then they built a room off of that.
Oh, we're gonna need a bathroom too. Let's build a
Right,
bathroom
and
too.
then we did,
I didn't think about that, when you just said that's a good viewpoint.
So we really have all kinds of folks, and, even speaking of Connecticut, in the community I was in, you could be on a road where the homes are very, very modest, to say the least, and they probably all satisfied for affordable housing. And then, because at the far end of the road, it's a newer development, the folks there all have, their kitchen is about the cost of the house down the street. And it's like,
One idea for larger developments is you create, sort of a very similar structure, and some of those structures are single-family homes, and others that look just the same are 3 or 4 apartments.
duplexes
So
and
you have
stuff.
consistency in terms of what the community looks like, but you still have.
Does the planning board have any restrictions on that? Do they have to come before us and say, this is what the houses are gonna look like and things like that? I mean, can we decide?
That would be site plan.
Yeah, site plan,
Yeah.
and we don't have any control over that.
No, the town has reviewed the opportunity for that.
I know that they tried that, I know that, yeah, I know that, a long time ago they have.
yes.
Yeah.
But I know that some kids now, we're talking about kids feel kind of, I don't know how to put this, because they don't live in a house that's gorgeous, feels kind of, sometimes for their whole life, that they feel left out. But that's a social issue. Anyway, continue. I just had a couple
No,
questions.
I understand where you're coming from.
You're not wrong.
Oh, I didn't think I was wrong. I wasn't referring to the ones, I was just thinking how.
You're not wrong.
how
And your
people-
comments are...
How people feel.
You have to become members of the planning board, not feel included in that.
Right, making the rules. They make up their own things in their own heads, so it's just somehow most people feel.
God, if we had to legislate how people feel, my goodness, we'd have a hard time. I can't even control myself. Exactly.
So again, 10.6.2, we would just want to add in cluster development. In place of that.
Yeah.
And when we have this reviewed, Betsy, I think is the one that's going to pass over, can you flag that 10.6.1 and ask if you knows what we were looking at the time?
What we were, what at the time?
What does that mean? What does 10.6?
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. I wrote on there omit, because I thought maybe we decided we were going to omit that, but I guess we didn't. But I'll ask you,
Yeah, it sort of sounds
under
like,
permission.
it sort of sounds like the homes don't need to be clustered, but I'm not sure. The only reason that would make a difference is if it impacted common land, but I just, I'm at a loss as to what.
Which one, where was it?
That's on page 4.
It's the first of the incentives.
Well, the government says the
In a manner to minimize the.
As Peter's the town
Right,
attorney,
but
and it's
as opposed
all ready to go,
Oh, yeah, he has to
yeah.
put
So,
it in anyway to put it in.
yeah,
the
interim
warrant.
things we can ask about, but when we're ready to send it,
But if you need help with wordings, you can call,
Right, but that one,
But on corners is,
I think, Peter may have been involved in the original wording of that one, so
Okay.
maybe we can check. So I looked through my emails, I don't have emails to go that far back to see if maybe it's worth looking at the minutes
Yeah.
when we get back, see if there's any discussion. about it.
Okay.
Right. When do we put this in?
2008 or 10, I forget.
10, okay, it says 10.
Okay.
Would it save the town some money if you went to the town council and asked them to review this and get a different idea before you actually sent something to, to the lawyer? The town council?
Who's the town council? I thought that was Peter Malia.
No, I meant the,
government
council, the
center.
government center.
Oh,
In
that's
general,
That's,
You mean municipal association?
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they can answer our questions, I think.
right, just not in this
Or,
particular section.
and then, we get the whole body put together, and it would go to Peter Malia,
right.
because he's gonna have to enforce it if any of it goes to court.
Right.
So we want him to put his okay on it too, the wording. and-
I just wanted to have Peter look at this section because he was involved in the writing of this section
Yeah.
previously, and we don't seem to understand what it means anymore. So I don't think the New Hampshire Municipal Association would shed any light on that. That would be something Peter.
Right, they would look at it and say, well, it looks okay to me.
Well, or what we guys think that he wrote it.
And how come you don't know what it means if you wrote it?
Oh, we wrote it then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we, not being on this group,
Yeah, okay,
we
don't know that.
do not know what
Okay.
we were thinking.
Okay.
And they may have copied it from some other town's ordinance. And maybe they knew what they meant, but we didn't.
Or that we at the time knew exactly what it meant.
It's an incentive, so we had some idea why it was an incentive, but we called it an incentive.
I mean, I seem to understand it, but you look at it and you kind of go,
But how do you understand it?
It's hard to understand, to tell you. the truth.
it seems to suggest that you may, a cluster suggests that you put structures within a fairly confined space.
Which is sort of what creates that open space.
Right, and what this suggests is that if, from an environmental perspective, you can argue that that would be inappropriate,
Mhm.
and that you can, when you have a particular site, it might be better not to do that. And then you may, if I'm reading this correctly, in those instances, the planning board can look at it and say, because of environmental reasons, what you're proposing, not cluster, but it's cluster development, is a better solution, even though it's not clustered. And that's what I understand this to mean.
So my two questions then would be, does that impact common land in some fashion? Because if you spread things out,
It may impact open
open
space
space.
as opposed to common land. Common land would still continue to be of equal amounts, but the open space may be less.
And then, if we're talking about, that to minimize environmental impact, should it be in this affordable housing thing, or should it just be in section 8 for any cluster development that are not affordable housing?
I would say that this should not be specific to affordable housing, yeah, I would agree on that. But I think that's what that means. If I'm reading this-
No, that makes some sense.
If I'm reading this correctly, if I'm understanding the language of it.
Now, I think for the moment, we leave it there, but that might be something that we clean up at some point.
So basically on that page 4, it's mostly just the renumbering, and we're going to leave out at 10.6.2, we won't have the word for alternative 1. We'll say in compliance with section 8, cluster
To
house.
say for cluster housing with development.
Okay.
Development. So use that phrase. And then alternative 2 would be incentives for
Single lot subdivision.
creation of the affordable workhouse through the creation of a new lot.
Right.
And the new lot created for, incentives for the,
Yeah, the second one really isn't an incentive.
what, meaning that water supply
I mean,
built to state standards as opposed to,
oh, I'm sorry, right,
Section
right.
six.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, yeah. So, as an incentive, would it be worded if an applicant a water supply or septic system built to town to state standards would be acceptable?
as opposed to going by soils?
Right.
Or how do we?
Is that what that means, that we're?
That's what I thought we were doing.
Yes, as opposed to complying with section 6.
The way it's worded, I mean, it sort of means the same thing, but the way it's worded doesn't
We
sound
should
like it's-
word it the same way. I just pulled that from Whitman's, Whitman's thing. And what we have,
Would that become a legal problem if somebody, because we're allowing it to state specifications as opposed to town specifications, somebody comes in and wants to build a house and, just a house on a lot someplace, nothing to do with this, but saying, well, if you're going to allow it for state rules and regulations as opposed to town, how come I can't also use the
Because this
state's?
is more affordable.
Because we're creating an incentive for affordable housing.
But we're not going below state standards. We have more stringent standards than the state, and that's legal. We're allowed to do that.
Mhm.
And we're saying we'll reduce our standards,
Okay.
but not beyond
State requirement.
state level.
State still has
Yeah,
the authority.
to say,
Yeah, well, I get that part, but I was just saying, if somebody comes in and gets really angry and says, well, how come I can't?
Do you want to do affordable housing?
Yeah,
Well,
we'd let them do
Right.
that. They could build an affordable unit if they wanted.
And you get, anytime you want to do that, you
Houses.
want to just do a
maybe
house.
they could do an auxiliary.
Right, maybe all they want is a 2-bedroom house and they'd like to be able to qualify, if that's okay. So we could use that same wording that's
Yes,
in the,
as above, yes, we do
Yeah.
that.
okay.
And I know
I was going to suggest that.
So I know I'm going against the tide, but I feel 150 feet is not much teeth to this. I think as an advocate, if we go to 125, I respect the concern you voiced, something that, we're letting things become more dense, but I just think that the number of times that this will actually be used is going to be very few. It's really not going to have a material impact on the density of the town, but only a few instances could have a significant impact on how it,
So you're talking about frontage up on the areas and dimensions?
yes.
Okay.
I just think that going from 200 to 150 is not much.
I agree.
And going to 125 would be significantly better, but I just don't think it's going to.
Can we talk about that? Because I've been wrestling with this one.
Well, that's why.
I've been wrestling with this one since our conversation as to how, I took your input as being, hey,
Well, I've rethought that some too, so I got thinking of a quarter acre lot, or half acre lot, I should say, which would be 100 by 200, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it could be, that was after our conversation last
we
week.
have like Jerry's comments were, 100, and it's like, wow, and maybe 150, and then 100, like, what's a good number when you think about it? For example, I don't know, just thinking about my own lot, I've got 287 feet of frontage, something like that. Most of us have some kind of frontage on road. And if you, whether it's 125 or 150, I still can't carve something out of my frontage and allow for an additional piece of development and still leave 200 feet for myself. I'm only stuck with 87 feet. So, any which way, it's not going to work. And I'm thinking, how many people have 300 plus or 350 plus feet of frontage on a road where they can carve out? And the reality of it is most of the lots that we have in town are already established as lots. And it's very rare that you have somebody that has more than a couple of 100, 300 feet for a frontage. And how often are you going to actually be able to carve out even 150 feet or 100 feet? 100 might be more likely, but even at 100 feet, how many places are you going to be able to carve that out? Or if somebody has an undeveloped lot that's 300 feet, are they really going to build 3 affordable housing units at 100 each? It's not going to happen. So, exactly, and my point is that it's like, no matter what we set this at, the level of development that might occur is going to be minimal, because there aren't that many situations other than maybe the Hardings to have, 1,000, 2,000 feet of frontage on carte blanche. They might decide that even though they live in a river plain, floodplain and all that, so they should put affordable housing up there. Right?
We might have difficulty with the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. They might wish that we didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Where I think it could make a difference is when someone is constructing a road to provide their frontage.
Right.
No.
And now, because they have to build a shorter road, then for that developer, it may make financial sense. They may make as much money putting in an affordable lot because they have to construct a shorter road. So they're trading, less road construction for a lower value for the lot. But in the end, if it doesn't wash, it becomes a lot closer to washing.
yeah.
This has to come before the town anyway, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody, people
Yeah,
will accept.
and the flip side of that is again, at a, I don't know, 100 and a quarter, are you going to end up ever getting a lot that's going to be large enough to satisfy our requirements for septic and
Well, sure, because you can have 100 acre frontage and 100 acre lot setting off of it, and we have a lot of those. And that's a problem. That's a problem we do have. Is we've got huge lots that don't have enough frontage to be subdivided.
And that's what Jared was thinking, in fact, he talked to you about it afterwards. It's all that land is up there and not enough frontage in the front here. That's what he was referring to, because he did talk to you about
And the
it.
other thing is that, while less frontage overall means more density, but if you're talking 2 lots side by side, each one could have 400 feet of frontage, but the 2 homes would still be, 100 feet apart, or whatever the setback is off the property line.
And there's no way we can word that, so it wouldn't be on, it would have to be on a new road and not an existing.
I don't see
I don't think you can say, you own this piece of land, and because you bought it at this time, you're screwed, and this, you bought it new, you're okay.
Most of my neighbors have large frontage.
Well, a perfect example, I think, of where it looks like there's almost no frontage is where the Woodsons are right next door to where Tim Scott lives now, I think, on Dundee. Those driveways aren't, they're not more than 10 feet apart, maybe. So you think there's almost no frontage on both of those, but certainly the Woodsons lot is plenty big. And I expect Tim's, where his mother's house had been, I don't know much about the shape of that lot.
On that particular one, they do have frontage on the other road on the other
Okay,
side.
yeah.
And I heard they
No,
may
right.
be developing a driveway out that way.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been one there.
But if you have frontage in 2 towns,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
Just not specified as to be in Jackson.
So did we decide anything about the 125 on the single lot?
I guess it's up for, we just had a discussion, up for vote, you want to change it?
Well,
I
should
have a
vote.
vote to change it.
And I hear a motion to make a change, I hear a second.
Second.
And the motion is to change it from 150 to 125, is that correct?
And that's for 6 point, just for the single lot.
Right, I think the cluster of 150, and, you know, that alleviates some of the concern.
Yeah, I like that.
You understand what we're voting on? Okay, good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
That's it.
Yeah, that does make sense.
10.6.3, the little dot, the little I goes to 125 feet. Down below, the 10.6.3.
And the double I is going to have the language the same as.
Not right down there, okay, that one, okay. That's-
So the clustered housing group would still stay 150, because that's more homes.
Okay.
And then, Sarah, you were saying the number, the little, the two I's mean,
Double I is, instead of,
oh, that's right,
the state standards, we'll just repeat the same language that's up
okay.
in 3 I's up above. the
Yeah.
cluster. Just so that that's the same incentive.
Yes.
Is that it?
Okay. Have we got through everything?
I want to make a comment again that I don't like the fact that if somebody makes more than their income, they have to be out of the house in a year. I don't like that in there. I don't care if it's written up in the towns or the states or whatever it is. I don't like that.
So Kathleen, the way it
That's
is,
only rentals,
the
right?
way it is for rentals, so that, let's say it's a family of 3, and they moved in when their income was under 58,000. 58,300 or something is the max. At 135% of that 58,000, that's 20,000 more. They're earning 78,000 a year now. They have a year in which to find another place to live. If they're living in 1,000 square feet and they're earning 78,000 a year, they're not going to want to stay much longer. So it's trying to keep that place available to people who need. It wouldn't be somebody who owns a house getting kicked out, it would just be a rental needs to try to move within a year.
And
Did it say rental on there?
Yes, it talks about tenant.
to your point, yes, it can get really nasty when you have folks who are really under this kind of thing and they're living there and they call it home. And all of a sudden, something's improved because one of the members gets a better job or is going to school, graduated, and now is contributing to the income of the family, and all of a sudden, the household members have a much greater income earnings. And it's like, in the town in which I live, we had somebody who created just this kind of example. He actually donated the entire property as part of his legacy, tied, and 28 units, and they're all affordable housing, and they're all tenants and not owners. And yep, the town had to actually receive the materials in and have to actually ask people, they have to leave.
Now, who's going to be in
And
charge
I
of
made a
that saying
mistake.
you have to leave?
I made a mistake, it's not 78,000, it's 98,000, because 58,000 is 8% of the median income, and they're talking about 135% of the median income, so they moved in at earning 58,000, they're now earning 98,000.
Well, that's not going to happen around here.
Well, but that's the reality of it, and yes.
Where is this language?
It's currently in
This is,
10.8.3.
yeah. Remember those hippies who approved this back in 2008, you know? But
Well, who's
For
going to be in
family
charge of telling them
three.
they have to leave? I mean, it's,
I think it says a select board, doesn't it?
it's like select people, and you know how good they are about Of course not.
When we have a development like that, if we ever do, then the select board is probably going to say, you know, this is too complex for us to manage. We need 3 volunteers who are going to make this work. And those volunteers, you know, just like the supervisors of the checklist or something or other, are once in a while going to be called upon to review the lease for something. And so if it's a 3-person household with an income of up to $58,000 and they move in, that's great. But then they get an income of $98,000 and somebody realizes that and says, you know,
Time for you to move on.
It's
And make
September.
that housing available to somebody who has a lower income. It's that simple.
and it's September, they have until the following September to find someplace else to live. We're not kicking them out, you know, unreasonably, but we're saying, hey,
Time to move on.
yeah, time to let somebody else move in here.
But the federal government, if you have an FHA loan, lots of times people will start out on 1% interest. As you make more money, the interest goes up. Once you make a certain amount, they force you to go through the bank, you know. You've got a choice, you either make your payments or you lose your house. And you have to, I mean, really, you have to refinance. It's just, so the federal government does it, why couldn't you do it with rents? Or you'd have to go up on the rent. If
And people who move in there are gonna know that, you know,
Yeah.
geez, if I start making $90,000 a year, if I start earning $40,000 a year more than I am today, tough luck, I'm gonna have to move.
They make
Or
more.
good luck, I'm going to have.
Or what if it's an elderly person? I mean, because this is also for elderly homes as well.
All right, what's the likelihood an elderly person's income level is going to change from year to year?
I don't know.
Geez, I came about it.
If you can find a way for my income level to improve dramatically, I'd like to know because
If I
I'd
can
like
hear
to
it
sign
in
up.
here, too, I'll move to a different spot.
We're not trying to legislate social.
We'll be glad if we have that problem.
So on the back of that sheet with all the pretty blue and red, it says, do we want to just focus on these housing ideas and private roads? And we're not going to do the groundwater protection. That's what I'm assuming people were saying from last time. I think that's what I heard. I just want to be sure.
I would like to defer, if we could, in order to keep our focus for the town meeting on just the housing.
And not change the numbers until,
Right, we'll do that later.
Right.
That's housekeeping.
So keep it as simple, because I think these are, if we do it the way I think we can do it, this is real minimal, it's minimal change. And it shouldn't be anything when somebody looks at it to say it's, you know, drastic changes to our zoning ordinance. Because they aren't. It just says we're going to allow for additional language to allow for maybe tweaking in the sentence. But to be honest, the kinds of things that you'd like to be able to do, we're just not able to do. And, I mean, if you could have, you would have proposed like 20, 30, 40 more items, right?
Well, if we could, if we could, we would have proposed a short-term rental.
Yeah. And there's at least 4 or 5 other things that you'd like to have been able to talk about that we can't do because we're constrained from doing that as a town. And so I think these are really, unfortunately, small potatoes compared to what you'd like to be able to do. So if we can keep it there. But I think if we try to do the groundwater, it's just like totally different, and we don't have any real pressure on that. I
Our
went to the,
priority's got to be housing.
yeah, I mean, the original presentation was that we have 8 sites here that are kind of not really, you know,
Yeah.
we do have a salon that's near the river. And, you know, I mean, that was one of the eight different opportunities that we had in town. It's like, okay, this isn't a big stop here.
You do not have Kearsarge and electrical.
No.
At least I hope not. Unless somebody's got some private thing going on
We
in the
don't have any
backyard.
industry.
Yeah. yeah, well,
Well, the epoxy from that.
hey, other people building chairs up the road here. So, are we agreed that we'll hold off on that?
Yep.
And housekeeping stopped in 2016, looks like a good thing. And we'll leave the numbering alone?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I think we can change the numbering when we redo the ordinance. We can move parking or something a little bit further back. I think it's smart. Steve's comment about section 8 being confused
Yep.
with the federal thing, I think we're smart to just
Leave it.
get out of that.
Who's gonna know that?
Yeah, we'll just move parking into section 8 and have, something else. I think that will work.
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
I'll second it.
To adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay, nice, thank you. Thank you, everybody.